So, I have to be here to present Annexin Pharmaceuticals, so thank you to the organizers. I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Anna Frostegård, to meet all of you and present our story. So we are a company located in Stockholm, Sweden. We are publicly traded. We're only 5 employees right now, but we're in a growth phase, we believe. It's hard to be in a growth phase in this kind of financial environment, but we are in terms of our activities. Working with a human protein called Annexin A5. It's a fundamental biological function with that, but a protein that you should all know, but not many know about this protein. Anyway, so we're experts in that field. When we produce it, we call it ANXV, which is a recombinant version of it. It's going to be a first-in-class kind of biologic product in the end if we succeed. It has a very broad potential, not only in ophthalmology. GMP production is completed. It's going to be an IV infusion, where it is an IV infusion. Our IP is based on production patents as well as methods of use patents. We're through the phase 1 clinical trial in healthy volunteers, about 36 patients, or healthy volunteers, I should say, were exposed. There were no safety issues and no immunogenicity found with our drug. So our zoom in on ophthalmology is for several reasons, which I will come back to. But it's going to be challenging the use of anti-VEGFs. It may become a first-in-line drug would change the care for RVO patients in the future. It's a huge market, as I will present to you. We get regulatory advice from the FDA, and we have now an FDA-approved clinical phase 2 proof-of-concept study just about to start. So, this is more of a teaser, which tells you that anti-VEGF is the commonly used treatment for RVO, obviously, but if you look at the number of pathological events occurring in RVO patient, actually anti-VEGF doesn't address those. So I'll come back to this slide later. In this audience, maybe I shouldn't have to present RVO, but in a sense, it's an occlusion of a branch of the retinal veins or the central retinal vein, and depending on which, you will have a more or less severe development. You will get macular edema, swelling of larger parts of the retina, you get bleeding, cell death, and you get growth of new blood vessels, which is the main target of anti-VEGFs. So, and the vision impairment you will see varies, but this is just one example of what the patient will experience, and quite suddenly so. This is the commonly used treatment. Again, I don't have to tell you, but it's probably the second most common cause of blindness. The current treatments are basically invasive intravitreal treatments, and although ophthalmologists tend to say there's a good treatment, but yes and no, they're only 20% of the patients that actually regain full vision following an RVO. The market is quite sizable. It's supposed to be, according to independent research, $15 billion US in 2020, growing to $32 billion US in 2032. By territory, the North American market dominates, obviously. Interestingly, the central vein occlusions dominate as well, although they are only about 1/5 of the overall patients. And anti-VEGF dominates totally when it comes to sales. So what is the Annexin A5 actually doing? So it's actually targeting PS, phosphatidylserine, which is a membrane phospholipid that flips from the inside to the outside of cells when they are stressed or damaged physically. It's a signal of apoptosis. So when cells are undergoing some changes, they flip on the outside. You'll see that in red blood cells of RVO patients. You will see it in sickle cell disease patients, red blood cells. You will see it on the endothelium of untreated diabetic patients as well. And cancer cells also express PS, which is a danger-associated molecule. And what Annexin A5 NXV does is that it binds, it blocks the signaling of phosphatidylserine, PS. So it forms trimers sitting basically on top of the PS molecule. And it's been implicated not only in RVO, it's implicated in acute vascular disease, even in cancer, inflammatory bowel disease, sepsis, and viral infections. Actually, also some studies ongoing in COVID-19 using Annexin A5. So it's a very broad biology that we're addressing. More specifically to RVO, phosphatidylserine is involved in RVO, and one of the hypotheses behind RVO. So actually scientists at INSERM in Paris brought red blood cells from RVO patients into the lab and study the PS expression on those red blood cells, and they were higher than normal controls and higher also than in retinal artery occlusion. So if you look at the degree of adhesion to endothelial cells, meaning the vascular endothelium covering the veins, the PS expression, if PS expression increases, the adhesion of the red blood cells to the endothelium increases. And the slide part to the right shows that if you interfere with that adhesion under stimulation conditions of venous blood flow, slowly infusing or fusing red blood cells over in a layer of endothelial cells, they do attach endothelial cells, but if you mix Annexin A5 into that system, you block that adhesion, which means that there's potential for actually stopping the further adhesion of red blood cells causing the RVO. So now coming back to this slide again, if you look at the effects of mechanism of actions of Annexin A5 compared to anti-VEGFs, we have this the red blood cell hypothesis, which is one of the potential causes of CRVO in particular, maybe BRVO as well. And Annexin A5 is also acting, shown in different other systems, antithrombotic locally, anti-inflammation. It's actually as efficacious as dexamethasone in some animal models in cardiovascular disease. It's also anti-apoptotic. It repairs cell membranes physically. It can improve circulation indirectly. It should also be able to reduce the angiogenesis by stopping the events early on. It should actually reduce VEGF production locally in the retina. So at least that's what we're hoping for in our phase 2 proof of concept trial. So this trial is a first step into patients for our drug. We're targeting recent onset of RVO, which we think we can do maybe best things with Annexin A5 and NAXV in the early stages of the disease development. So soon after diagnosis, we will confirm safety, which is obviously one of the major aims. We will seek initial indications of efficacy. We hope this study will be a preparative study to detail for larger phase 2 and phase 3 trials. It's a randomized, double-masked, placebo-controlled study. It's an adaptive design, multiple doses, and the safety board will determine whether we can move forward to higher doses continuously. It's a sort of experimental study in the sense that we will look at many different outcomes, not only BCVA, but also OCT, OCTA, microperimetry, and ultra-wide field FA. And importantly, we have been allowed to deliver Annexin A5 or NXV before introduction of anti-VEGFs. And it has got FDA approval, as I mentioned. We have expert CROs and clinical sites contracted already. Many of them are here in the room. We haven't announced it officially, so I'm just hiding it a little bit still. But we hope to see results by the end of the year. We hope for a relatively fast recruitment rate. With this, this is my last slide. The company is working with fundamental biology again. We have done the first in-human study. We're doing it in parallel, actually, in imaging study with fluorescently labeled NXV in RVO patients to further understand where the binding to the retina is more specifically. We have got the regulatory advice from European and FDA. And a proof of concept trial will hopefully give us data by the end of the year to move forward to phase 2A, phase 2B and phase 3 studies. We hope to have partnerships by then, or maybe we will do it on our own, moving further on, depending on the financing capabilities, obviously. So we're here to seek both partnerships potentially, as well as interested investors. The company is not going to limit ourselves necessarily to RVO. There's opportunities for other indications in ophthalmology, as well as other indications outside of ophthalmology. So thank you very much for your attention. I guess you're welcome to join the breakout sessions now. Thank you.